Topic shortly. As you probably know, recent comments from President Obama suggested that he believes Supreme Court justices deciding the fate of the health care law should take into account the decision already made by Congress. The president basically said it would be wrong of the justices of the Supreme Court to overturn it. Let's talk about it with Ian Millhiser, a policy analyst and blogger who focuses on the Constitution and the judiciary for the Center for American Progress. Kurt Levy is executive director of the Committee for Justice, and both of them served as law clerks for the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. Ian, you don't think much of what this judge in the Fifth Circuit asked the Justice Department to do. Why?
I don't think very much of it at all. You know, this judge did not go after George Bush when he said over and over again that activist judges are thwarting the will of the people. He didn't go after Mitt Romney when Mitt Romney said a few months ago that unelected judges are thwarting the will of the people. But when a Democratic president says the exact same thing that Bush and Romney has said, suddenly this judge has a problem with it. That isn't how judges are supposed to act. This is partisanship on the part of the judiciary, and it's not appropriate at all for judges to weigh into political disputes this way.
But wait a minute, didn't he essentially challenge the president when the president said that the Supreme Court should not overturn the health care law because, you know, the court doesn't have the power? Isn't that essentially what he was challenging?
The court doesn't have the power to overturn the Affordable Care Act. The Constitution says that Congress can regulate commerce. The Affordable Care Act is a regulation of 1/6 of the nation's economy. The court can overturn many things if they are actually unconstitutional. But the only thing that the court has the power to do is to follow the text of the Constitution of the United States. Striking down the Affordable Care Act is not within the judiciary's power.
Kurt, you seem to disagree.
Well, you know, it's wonderful to hear liberals suddenly saying that the court should follow the text of the Constitution because, of course, during my entire life, they've always said they believe in a living Constitution, which is that judges should change the Constitution to help it evolve, that they should invent new rights. So, first of all, I'm happy to hear this new tune. But, of course, Mr. Millhiser, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, just repeated the same mistake that the president made, which is to say that no, a court cannot overturn this. It's fine for him and the president to say that they believe it's constitutional, but to say they can't overturn it is to say if they make the decision I don't like, they're wrong, they're acting outside of their authority. And that's exactly the violation of separation of powers that Obama got in trouble for and somewhat backtracked from the next day, and I expect the Justice Department will backtrack further in the document they're releasing this afternoon.
Ian, you suggested that this is essentially a conservative judge making sort of a Republican-Democrat argument, but isn't it more a judiciary versus executive branch argument?
No, it's not. You know, I don't normally use the words I'm about to use, but I agree with Rush Limbaugh. Limbaugh said on his show yesterday the reason why the judge did this is because he's trying to help defeat the president. And Limbaugh's right here. That is the reason. That's the only reason why the judge would weigh into a political dispute like this. And I want to push back a bit on something that Kurt just said. It's a really radical statement to say that judges have the power to strike down laws regardless of what the Constitution says. My position's very clear. My position is that judges are bound by the Constitution and they are powerless to strike down the Affordable Care Act because the Constitution clearly says that it is acceptable.
Well, that's a very new position coming from liberals. They've often thought judges can bend the Constitution. But you don't have to bend it here because Obamacare is illegal under any reading of the Commerce Clause.
That's what they argued about in the Supreme Court, and the Solicitor General, you know, a lot of people thought did not make very good arguments, Kurt.
And there's a reason, because you cannot get around the fact that if Obamacare is constitutional, if you expand the Commerce Clause enough to do that, then there are no limits on congressional power, and that's not what the Founding Fathers intended.
What the Constitution says is that Congress can regulate commerce. That means non-economic laws, murder laws, truancy laws, rape laws, assault laws, all kinds of laws that Congress can pass. They can regulate the economy. That's what the words regulate commerce means. And in this country, either judges follow the Constitution or there will be no limits on what judges can do.
So what about the question, Ian, about creating commerce so that Congress can regulate it, forcing everybody into the individual mandate?
Yeah, we have an entire existing healthcare market. All that this does is say that how that market should function. This is regulating existing commerce.
Well,
except that people who don't want to buy insurance are forced to buy insurance. That's the difference.
I guess we're wandering a little bit into arguing over again what the Supreme Court has already heard. We're trying to focus in this segment on what the president said about the Supreme Court. Kurt, what about hasn't the Supreme Court already, in fairly recent history, overturned rulings of Congress that it found to be unconstitutional?
Yes, it did. And under the Commerce Clause, it did so. In 95, the Gun-Free School Zones Act, and then in about the year 2000, part of the Violence Against Women Act. So when the president also said the other day that it would be unprecedented for the court to strike down Obamacare, he was wrong about that too. They've done it twice recently, and this would be very consistent with those decisions. So it was just demagoguing the president was doing. He was not, he knows constitutional law better than he let on Monday, that's for sure.
Kurt Levy is with the Committee for Justice. Ian Millhiser is with the Center for American Progress. Good discussion. It's going to be interesting to see what the Justice Department says in that letter today. Gentlemen, thank you both.
Thank you.
Well, the world's first computer